As of September this year, Ukraine's Western allies have imposed over 14,000 sanctions on Russia. The sanctions began with the annexation of Crimea in 2014, but Russia set a global record for the number of restrictions following its full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Now, after 1,000 days of war, the European Union is preparing its 15th sanctions package, targeting not only Moscow but also its allies, including North Korea, Iran and China.
Putin's aggressive war is also an attack on our freedom here in Europe, affecting the core interests of every European state. We are very clear about this with those supporting this brutal war against Ukraine, this war against freedom in Europe.
Sanctions targeting oil and gas sectors have been among the most painful for Russia, a country heavily dependent on energy exports. Starting in the winter of 2022, Europe systematically reduced its reliance on Russian gas. The EU banned maritime imports of Russian oil, while the G7 implemented price caps to limit Moscow's revenue. Asian markets couldn't fully replace the lost European demand. Moscow often cut supplies itself, ultimately harming its economy. As a result, Russia's oil and gas export revenues fell by 40% in 2023, making it increasingly difficult for the Kremlin to fund its war.
The Kremlin's recent economic policies indicate that the Russian economy will likely face significant challenges in 2025, and that Russian President Vladimir Putin is worried about Russia's economic stability in the long term. The Kremlin recently adopted several policies that aim to cut Russian government spending on wounded Russian servicemen, combat inflation and address long-term demographic problems, such as low birth rates and labor shortages. These policies demonstrate that the Russian economy is not as resilient to Western sanctions, monetary constraints and the cost of the war effort as the Russian government postures, from a report by the Institute for the Study of War.
Meanwhile, war expenses continue to soar. Russia's 2025 state budget allocates over 13 trillion rubles to the defense and military-industrial complex, a 27% increase from 2024. However, healthcare spending remains under 2 trillion rubles, unchanged despite rapid inflation, effectively reducing its real value. Record investments in the military combined with war expenses have led to the ruble's devaluation and increase in the central bank's interest rate to 21%, and relentless price hikes, which the government has failed to control.
They haven't implemented price caps or similar mechanisms. Why? Because they realize that product shortages are far worse than rising prices. Because you can see it. Visually, having items on shelves is crucial for them, even if it means tolerating shrinkflation, where packaged Cs shrink to disguise price increases.
Russia's banking sector has been severed from the global financial system. Beyond being cut off from SWIFT, Moscow struggles to process payment in foreign currencies, even with supposed allies like China, Turkey and India. The Kremlin has also lost access to advanced technologies. Sectors like civil aviation and automotive manufacturing suffer from the lack of Western components. Russia's much-touted import substitution has failed.
We even import nails. Guess the country in 3 tries. In a nation that produces so much metal, we can't even manufacture nails.
Soaring war expenses, a growing budget deficit, inflation, rising prices, workforce shortage, mass migration, and lack of access to Western markets and technology are just some of Russia's economic challenges. The country is now entering a period of stagflation.
Russia is diving headlong into stagflation, the worst possible economic scenario. Economic stagnation combined with high inflation. No one knows how to escape it. Fighting stagnation means injecting money, but that fuels inflation. Fighting inflation means tightening the money supply, worsening stagnation. It's like taking both a laxative and a sedative at the same time while trying to feel great.
By 2025, experts predict Russia's economy will face an unprecedented crisis. If Western sanctions and internal policy missteps collide, the country could see the collapse of its economic systems. Reported by Bastun Katerina, Larisa Petruk, UATV News.